There is a version of Jimin that the world sees on stage. The one who moves like water and fire at the same time. The one whose voice cracks open something in your chest and doesn't apologize for it. The one who walks into an arena of 60,000 people and makes every single one of them feel like he's singing directly to them. That version of Jimin has been on full display throughout the entire Arirang World Tour. City after city, stadium after stadium, night after night. By the time BTS landed in Las Vegas for the AMA 2026, Jimin had already performed in front of more people in a single year than most artists will ever see in a lifetime. And yet, after everything, after the sold-out stadiums, after the world tour that had ARMY lining up for days just to be in the same room as him, after the performances that trended worldwide before they even finished, Jimin sat down in front of his phone for a Weverse Live after the American Music Awards and said something that stopped every single person watching cold. He said that standing on that AMA stage was the most nerve-wracking moment of his entire year. Not the stadium shows, not the opening night of a tour, not the first performance after the group reunited. The AMA, the award ceremony, the moment that millions of people watched on television while eating dinner and scrolling their phones. That was the one that got him. And if you watched that Weverse Live, if you were one of the ARMY who stayed up past midnight, or set an alarm, or refreshed Weverse for the 14th time waiting for the notification, you already know what I'm talking about. Because you saw it. You saw the exact moment when Jimin stopped being the performer and became just a person. Someone sitting there with his whole heart on the outside of his chest, trying to find the words for something that clearly meant more than he knew how to say. Before we get into everything that happened on that Weverse Live, I want to give you the full picture of the night that preceded it. Because context matters here. What Jimin felt, what he said, what he couldn't hide, none of it makes complete sense unless you understand what happened at MGM Grand Garden Arena on May 25th. BTS won 3 awards that night. 3. Artist of the Year, which is the grand prize, the top of the entire show. Song of the Summer, Best Male K-pop Artist. 3 awards at one of the 3 major pop music awards ceremonies in the United States, right up there with the Grammys and the Billboard Music Awards. And what makes those 3 awards different from trophies handed out by critics or industry panels is something RM made very clear during the Weverse Live. Every single winner at the AMA is decided by fan voting. 100%. No jury, no committee, no industry insiders deliberating behind closed doors. Just the fans. Just ARMY. So when BTS walked across that stage at MGM Grand Garden Arena and accepted Artist of the Year, they weren't receiving a verdict from the music industry. They were receiving a message. A direct, undeniable, quantifiable message from the millions of people who had chosen them. Deliberately, repeatedly, with their own hands and their own time. And BTS opened the entire ceremony. Not performed in the middle. Not closed the show. Opened it. With a video titled Hooligan, footage from their Las Vegas World Tour run, and the energy in that arena before the first award was even announced was already electric. They also presented the Best Female R&B Artist Award to SZA during the show. They were everywhere that night. They were the center of gravity. And then, after all of that, after the lights went down and the applause faded and the night officially belonged to history, they went live on Weverse. This is the part 1 need you to really sit with. Because here is what happened on that Weverse Live, and here is what Jimin could not hide. He was happy. Genuinely, overwhelmingly, almost disorientingly happy, the kind of happy that's so big it's almost indistinguishable from grief if you look at it too quickly. He said that standing on the AMA stage made him feel exactly as happy as the first time he ever stood on a stage as a member of BTS. Think about what that means. This is a man who has been performing for over a decade. This is someone who has stood in front of stadiums, who has sold out arenas across multiple continents, who has performed at some of the most iconic venues in the world. And he is telling ARMY, with complete sincerity, that accepting that award at the AMA felt like doing it for the first time. That's not something you say because it sounds good. That's not a rehearsed answer. That is what slips out when someone has been feeling something so strongly that it bypasses the filter entirely. That is what happens when a moment is so significant that your emotional memory collapses the distance between now and the very beginning, and suddenly the two are sitting right next to each other, indistinguishable. He also said it was the most nerve-wracking moment of his year. Jimin. who performed during the world tour to stadiums packed with tens of thousands of people, who has delivered vocal performances that have made music critics stop mid-sentence and reconsider everything they thought they knew about K-pop, who has taken the stage in conditions that would make most performers cancel through exhaustion, through pressure, through the weight of expectations so enormous that most people would crack under it. That man said the AMA was the moment that got his nerves the hardest. And you know why, right? You know why if you've been following BTS long enough. Because the AMA is fan-voted. Because that award, specifically, is a direct reflection of how many people cared enough to show up for them. Because when you've been performing for years and you walk into a room and suddenly you're not just being evaluated by your technique or your artistry or your professionalism, you're being evaluated by love. That is the thing that makes your hand shake. That is the thing that strips away all the armor. Jimin knew, standing in that arena, that every vote represented a person. A real person who chose him, who chose them. And that weight is different from any other kind of pressure in the world. Then there was the speech. I want to be specific here because the way Jimin delivered his gratitude that night was not accidental. It was not a standard acceptance speech. It was not a list of thank yous read from memory. Jimin said thank you in English first, clear, direct, facing the audience and the cameras and the entire watching world, and thanked ARMY for joining them on the world tour, for all the love that had followed BTS from city to city across North America and everywhere else. That was the public-facing part. That was the part meant for everyone in the building, everyone watching the broadcast, everyone who had tuned in from a different time zone just to catch a glimpse of this moment. And then he switched to Korean. He switched to Korean, and he said, I love you, to ARMY, in his first language, in the language he grew up with, the language he thinks in, the language that lives in the part of him that exists before performance, before stage presence, before any of the craft he has spent his entire life building. He went back to Korean to say the thing that mattered most. Here is something about that choice that I think deserves to be spoken out loud, because I don't want it to get lost in the noise of everything else that happened that night. When people reach for their first language, they reach for it because the thing they're trying to say is too important for a translation. Because they need the full weight of it, the full resonance, the full meaning that only lives in the words you learned before you knew you were learning. Jimin switched languages because what he felt in that moment was not a translated feeling. It was something original, something that started long before the world tour, long before the AMA, long before any of this. Something that started in Busan, in a trainee dorm, in a debut that nobody could have predicted would become this. And ARMY heard it, in every language, in every time zone. They heard it. Now, back to the Weverse Live. Because this is where the title of this video lives. This is where Jimin couldn't hide it. Here's the thing about Weverse Lives. There's no stage. There's no production team, no lighting design, no choreography to fall back on. It's just a person and a phone, and whatever is actually happening inside them in that moment. And for Jimin, who is one of the most emotionally intelligent people in that entire group, someone who has always had the ability to communicate feeling in a way that goes straight past your defenses, a Weverse Live after a night like the AMA is basically an open book. There's nowhere to put the feelings. There's nowhere to redirect them. They just live on his face, in the way he talks, in the things he can't stop himself from saying. He could not stop talking about ARMY. That was the thing he could not hide. He could not get through a sentence without circling back to them. Every observation, every feeling, every memory from that night, it kept coming back to the fans. Not in a performative way, not in the way that's designed to generate a reaction, but in the way that a person keeps returning to the thing that's actually on their mind. The way you keep mentioning someone's name in a conversation when they're the real reason you're talking at all. RM said it plainly on that same Weverse Live. These awards are 100% fan-voted, so it's all thanks to ARMY. And Jimin's whole energy on that live was the embodiment of that statement. The happiness that he couldn't contain, the nervousness he admitted to, the bilateral gratitude, English for the world, Korean for the heart, all of it traced back to the same source. The people who showed up for them, the people who keep showing up. And I want to sit here for a second, because I think it's easy to hear something like that and nod and move on. And I don't want us to do that. I don't want us to let "it's all thanks to ARMY" become background noise just because BTS says it often. Because the reason they say it often is because they mean it every single time, And the Weverse live after the AMA was one of the most unfiltered versions of that truth we have seen in a long time. Think about what Jimin's year has looked like. The Arirang World Tour has been enormous by any metric. Stadiums, multiple continents, nights that broke records and became the kind of shared memories that ARMY will be talking about for decades. He has given everything on those stages. And at the end of all of that, after one of the most grueling and triumphant stretches of his career, the thing that cracked him open the most was not a stadium performance. It was a room full of people voting. On their phones, in their homes, in the middle of their regular lives, taking a few minutes to choose him. There is something profoundly human about that. There is something that cuts straight through the spectacle of it all, the lights, the sets, the choreography, the production value, and gets to the most basic version of what this is. Someone making something. Someone else saying, I see it, I choose it, I want more of it. And that simple exchange, multiplied by millions of people over years and years, becoming something so large and so durable that it can still reduce ParkJimin to the emotional state of a brand new artist who doesn't yet know what's going to happen next. That's what was on his face during the Weverse live. That's what he couldn't hide. Not just happiness, not just relief. Something older than both of those things. Something that looked, honestly, a lot like gratitude, so deep it has no bottom. There were so many ARMY at MGM Grand that night. RM mentioned it. V mentioned it too. He said that every time BTS attends an awards ceremony, seeing the number of ARMY in the venue makes him feel confident. Imagine that. Imagine being in a room full of some of the biggest names in music, some of the most powerful people in the entertainment industry, cameras pointed at you from every direction. And the thing that makes you feel steady is looking out into the crowd and recognizing your people. Recognizing that they traveled, they bought tickets, they wore purple, they showed up. Again. Still. Always. That's what Jimin was processing on that Weverse live. That's what was written all over his face in every unguarded moment between sentences. He was processing the fact that after everything, after the years of proving themselves, after the military service, after the world tour, after all of it, the relationship between BTS and ARMY is not only intact but somehow bigger, somehow more meaningful, somehow still capable of making ParkJimin feel like it's his first day. Let me tell you why that matters, and why this Weverse live is not just a cute fan moment, but something genuinely worth paying attention to. We are living in an era of music that is more saturated, more competitive, and more disposable than any that came before it. Artists rise and fall in the span of a single news cycle. Fandoms fracture. Loyalties shift. The algorithm decides what matters today and forgets it by tomorrow. In that environment, the longevity of what BTS and ARMY have built together is genuinely extraordinary. Not just commercially it's self-evident. 3 AMAs in one night speaks for itself, but emotionally, the depth of it, the durability. Jimin sitting on that Weverse live and feeling like it's his debut night is not nostalgia. It's not sentimentality for its own sake. It's evidence. It's evidence that what he feels when he performs for ARMY, when he accepts an award that ARMY voted for, when he speaks to ARMY on a platform built for exactly this kind of intimacy, it hasn't dimmed. 12 years in, coming off one of the biggest tours of his career, and it still hits him the same way it did when he first learned what it meant to have fans who genuinely, deeply, unconditionally cared. That's rare. That is genuinely, objectively rare. And it's why this video exists, and why you're watching it, because you felt it too. You felt it the moment you saw the live clip, or read the translation, or watched some other ARMY on your timeline completely lose it over a 30-second moment that most non-fans would scroll past without a second thought. You felt it because you know exactly what it means. You've been there for enough of this story to understand why ParkJimin feeling like it's his first day matters. I also want to talk briefly about something that sits in the background of all of this, and that's the context of the night in terms of what wasn't there. RM wasn't on the red carpet. He wasn't part of the main stage performances. And he explained why on that same Weverse live, after finishing the Las Vegas concert, he wasn't feeling well, and he had no choice but to sit that part out. He still made it to the ceremony. He still accepted the awards. He was still there. But there's something that lands differently about a night like that when one of your members is operating at less than full capacity, pushing through something physical to be present for a moment that only happens once. It adds weight to what the night meant. It adds context to why Jimin's emotions were running so close to the surface. These are 7 people who have given enormous amounts of themselves to this career, to this tour, to this moment in their story. And the AMA was a night where all of that investment was acknowledged in the most direct possible way. Fan voted. No debate. Just numbers that said, "We see you, we choose you, we're still here." Of course, Jimin couldn't hide it. Of course, it all came out on Weverse Live. Of course, he kept looping back to ARMY, kept reaching for the words that were big enough to hold what he was feeling and finding that none of them quite fit. This is what happens when something means more than language can carry. You try English and it's not enough, and so you try Korean, and that's closer but still not quite, and so you keep talking, keep circling, keep trying to find the shape of the feeling and hand it to the people who gave it to you in the first place. That's what you watched. That's what went viral. That's what ARMY is still talking about the morning after, and the day after that, and probably long into the future when someone makes a compilation of BTS moments that remind you why you fell in love with this group in the first place. ParkJimin stood on the stage at MGM Grand Garden Arena with his members and accepted Artist of the Year at the American Music Awards. He thanked the world in English and thanked ARMY in Korean. He went home, or wherever home is when you're on a world tour, and he opened his phone and went live, and he was completely, transparently, helplessly full of feeling that he had absolutely no interest in hiding. And we were all there for it. If this is your first time on this channel, welcome. This is exactly the kind of content we live for here. Deep dives into the moments that matter, the things that happen when the cameras are supposedly off but actually ARMY is always watching. Hit subscribe if you want more, because we are not done talking about this world tour, this era, this version of BTS that somehow keeps finding new ways to make us feel everything all over again. If you've been here a while, you already know. Drop your reaction to the Weverse Live in the comments. Tell me which moment got you the most. Was it the happiness that looked like his debut night all over again? Was it the nerve-wracking confession? Was it the English to Korean switch that had everyone simultaneously combusting? Let me know. I read every single one. And before you go, share this video with someone who needs to see it. Someone who maybe hasn't been following the tour as closely, who missed the Weverse Live, who doesn't know yet that this happened. Because this is the kind of thing that reminds you what music actually is, what fandom actually is, what it means when an artist and their audience build something together that is so strong it can make a man with 12 years of stages under his belt feel like it's his very first night. Jimin couldn't hide it, and honestly, we wouldn't have wanted him to.